Liam, I'll start with you this time. When you think about, do you have a philosophy about giving or receiving feedback at practice? And is it different at tournaments and interacting with teammates or people you now coach?
That's a great question. I think that's like a big reason for Dark Side success is like really super open lines of communication. So we make it really abundantly clear that anyone is welcome to give anyone else feedback. Um, and like I think generally people do a really good job of like being accepting and open to that feedback. We play a lot of threes, a lot of like small side, um, like on non-practice days, and I think that's just like for a ton of people. But like we play mixed threes with Pleiades, and um, it's like has been a huge part of a ton of people's like on field development, and a lot of that is through just like really constant feedback. After a rep, just like two people, or like if there's miscommunication or whatever, like just going over what happened, people say their perspectives, and then you just like move on. And like, yeah, I think there's just like really constant feedback. I think like the tournament versus practice, I I mean, for us with Dark Side, like tournaments are information generally, like regular season tournaments we see as like information, um, and like opportunities to like, gather information about ourselves against non-us opponents. Um,
Yeah.
so there's like less need for, we're basically just like testing what we have at tournaments, and then practice is the time where we like build on what we have. So like there's some feedback, but a lot of that is like more top down feedback during tournaments, um, more like coach to player, and like captain to player feedback. But there's
Hmm.
still like lots of recapping, like the D will come off and like I'll talk about the last point and what happened or whatever. But I think more so at practice.
Quinn, do you have anything you want to add to that topic?
Um, so first I want to say it's I think the feedback loop that you guys have in North Carolina is like it's super sick, and I think it's a little bit underrated. I don't think people understand um, how hard it is to have everybody accepting to feedback and willing to take feedback and willing to give feedback. I think it's even slightly an issue we've had in Colorado through my college career and even into my club career, where people just aren't super good at taking feedback. People will make excuses and they'll say, "Well, but this," and it's so hard to get people to, even from captains, even from coaches. Like I've been a captain of Bird. I was captain of Bird for 2 or 3 years, Captain Bravo last year. Um, it's like people just always tend to make excuses or kind of brush it off because we're more peers than we are um, captains or coaches. Like when I give people feedback, I feel like a lot of people look at me as a peer and don't really take the feedback from me, and they kind of make excuses. So I think it's really commendable and super sick that you guys have that open feedback loop.
Yeah.
And like when I came into Bird, like there was no way I was even allowed to give people feedback. Or when I came into Bravo, like no one was gonna take
Yeah.
shit from me. Like all of that is something that, like, again, going back to the culture shift, it's like it's something recently that we've started to kind of move away from and shift. And it was long and difficult to do that. But um that's kind of my take on the Colorado scene. Like that's definitely a weak point for the Colorado Ultimate scene,
Yeah.
at least the teams I've been a part of.
Yeah, Kins, I'll pass it over to you. One comment about the Colorado community. I don't know if it's true, but we did. I wonder if we have more differing backgrounds than other areas. Um, but I imagine most areas probably do struggle with feedback in general and communication and being accepting of it. The fact that the Triangle has been doing it since they were in middle school is probably um, beneficial in terms of building those skills, both listening and giving. But we have a lot of differing, not just frisbee opinions, frisbee backgrounds, but also like social backgrounds. people come from a lot of different places, and that may factor into to some of it. Kenzo, this is your favorite topic, feedback.
I know, and I've been thinking about it. Like, I'm kind of at the point now where, like, personally, I'm just not gonna give feedback to most people because I feel like most of the time it's just not. It doesn't go well. Like, I don't think it really has an effect that I would want it to have. Like, in my ideal world, it'd be like, yo, if you just like let them run to the sideline a little bit earlier because like they're not going to get the disc there and like stop as a defender, like that would be really helpful. But I don't think like it, like, rarely ever is it like I give someone feedback, they implement it, and then like the perfect situation like
Manifest
occurs. Like, I think most of the time it's like we're gonna like get into like a debate about what's going on, or like it's gonna piss them off because now they think I'm like personally attacking them as a player. Like, I think what I've noticed is like with younger players, like I went to a couple like bird practices and stuff, like younger players who maybe like look up to me more, they're gonna at least be more receptive to it and like open to it. Whereas like if I try to give like someone in my grade or like my year feedback, it usually doesn't go as well. Where like those younger guys will be more receptive, but even still, like I don't think it's always like I'm kind of at the point where unless someone asks me something, I'm just going to focus on like doing those things myself, and hopefully people notice. Because I kind of got to the point where like unless people want to get better at ultimate or that specific thing, like honestly just going up to them, like it, for me personally, I was finding that it doesn't really help. And I've kind of done a 180, and I don't think that's the perfect way, and I'm sure that there's a way to give
like a happy medium.
I
probably
will say like this is going to be like a Kins and Quinn like growth over, you know, the 4 years or 5 years we played together or whatever. But like the first couple years we played together, we were both shit at taking feedback and giving feedback, and we would both try to give and take feedback from each other, and it would always result in us like getting in arguing or like yelling matches. But over probably the last year, I think we've had such good chemistry because now that we see each other more as equals, we take feedback from each other and actually implement it. Like I truly believe that we had a lot of success at nationals because we would talk through stuff and we would take each other's feedback constantly. And I don't have that with many other players on the teams I played on. There's definitely a couple, but I think we have gotten better at that. And I wish the whole team would be like that. And I'm gonna call out someone. I think Calvin could learn from this a bit. Calvin's a hard person to give feedback to because he's not good at taking it. But it's always
just like when you're like emotional people. Like that's why I love Buck so much. Is like Buck and I can tell each other what we think.
Be a Vulcan.
The other person
be a robot. Leave your emotions at the door. I'm actually kind of
not
completely.
Yeah, like
maybe I should say leave your ego at the door is probably the better way to say it.
Right, because like what my favorite thing about Buck is like when we lived together is like we could talk about ultimate, we could talk about the practice, the tournaments, and Buck will just tell me like straight out, like Kins, like you can't get upset or like whatever, right? And I'll be like, Buck, like you have to throw a better flick, right? But like it doesn't we don't get pissed off. Then we like talk about how we can get better at those things, and it's just like a great way to get better at something. Because like as much as I can assess like what I need to get better at, a lot of things that I need to get better at need to be told to me by someone else. And so it's fantastic when you can have those people that you trust. Because the other thing is it needs to be someone like I need to have played with them or have spent a lot of time with them to be able to have these conversations. Like I can trust Buck's opinion because we've played so much together, and I know like, you know, we have a good relationship that it's an opinion that I can trust. Whereas if it's someone I've like my first practice and they're going to, you know, maybe tell me what I suck at, like maybe you don't know.
There's that continuity piece. And maybe that's an advantage that the triangle area has. Like Liam hearing this, Does anything pop out or come to mind? Like,
Yeah.
do you have at times struggles in your area?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do think there are struggles. Like there are just like individual relationships that don't work as well for feedback, giving or receiving feedback. Like a lot of what I'm thinking about is like dark side, which is like pretty specific. Like I don't like dark side isn't my experience on dark side is not indicative of the way the entire triangle functions. Like dark side's pretty special.
Yeah.
And I think like a big thing on dark side is like we just see feedback as investment. Like if someone is willing to take the time to like think about you and think about a thing that either you did well, like I try and give like at least 5 pieces of positive feedback for every piece of negative feedback I give someone. So like I'm pretty much always trying to like just get my positive feedback quotas up. So I can just rip into people when I want to.
That's a great one, honestly.
I struggle with that one.
But more than that, like
yeah.
I love when people give me feedback because that means that they care about me. They care about me as a player. They care about the team, the goals that we have. Like our goal is to iterate and iterate and iterate until we have the best team we can have. And if we're like not communicating,
love that word. Yeah.
If we're not communicating, if we're not like, you know,
then what are you
having
doing,
our hive mind working?
Like the whole point is to get better.
Yeah. Why are we just like, we shouldn't just be like a bunch of individuals trying to pursue this like goal without like figuring out actually how we're working with each other, because it's team sport. So I think like that's a big thing, is just like one, like Darkside has a saying, we don't challenge people we don't care about. So like challenging each other, pushing each other, competing with each other, and like the care, like we care about each other. We want what's best for each other. And like feedback is a big way that we show that. We show investment in each other's games, in the team's performance.
Do you ever wish people would give you more feedback? Speaking from just like personal experience on teams I've been on, like when I've been on the upper side of the roster, I found that like I don't get feedback very much. It's extremely rare for people to give me feedback, and I wish it would be more common, but like I don't know. Did you find like when you're on the upper side of a roster, like you would get far less feedback than in years past?
Yeah, totally. That's something we talk about a ton, is like when you're a young player, it's like you're super lucky because like a bunch of people are watching you, a bunch of people are like giving you tons of feedback. And once you become like a person who gives more feedback, of course, like everyone's free to give feedback to each other, but like it generally happens where like people who know more give feedback to people who know less generally. So like you just get less and less feedback because there are fewer people who like actually have things to give you feedback on. So that's definitely something I try and communicate to younger players, is like get all the feedback you can now. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Just nuggets of wisdom.
Welcome to the club, Quinn. Welcome to the
No one's been able to give
VIP.
No one's been able to give Kins feedback for a long time, you know. He's been at the top.
Yeah, but it's not because he's on the top of the roster. No. He's such a douche, and it's really hard to.
I was actually, I disagree with you, Quinn. You were like, I think one of my strengths was actually receiving. I always thought that one of my strengths was like being pretty selfish. I think, up. But then
oh my God.
I'm gonna. Okay, but like Mikey,
I'm listening.
Mikey, what do you think? Well, what do you think about that? Like, if you, for you as someone who had to give me a lot of feedback as a coach, like, did you think that I received feedback poorly?
Yes. Yeah. I think so. Sure. There are times that let me let me expound a little bit. Like,
maybe I respond poorly in the moment, but I think I wouldn't have grown as a player if I wasn't listening to what people were saying.
Well, let me listen for a second, please. You're always willing to have the conversation. That is true, and that's, I think, step number one. A lot of times the conversation has to be, well, maybe not anymore, but in the past had to be 30 minutes or 60 minutes, like long individual attention, you know, especially when you're coming back from injury, the Labrum one, I think like you were your shitty teammate for a while, and we had to talk. That was a big part of your journey, and one reason why you're so much better now. And when you talk about things like giving less feedback and why it makes me so happy is because I know that it wasn't something that came supernatural to you before. And I don't know if you remember this, but like we were at Kit after one of those Lotus practices, and I told you like you weren't going to start for a tournament, and it was a tough conversation. I didn't want to have it.
Was it all? Were we talking about offense?
Maybe
I think
it might have been switching you. I think we were just not even starting you. I mean, honestly, it was to the point I called Nut on the drive home from a practice and be like, I don't know what to do with Kins. What do you think? And I had to
for a Lotus practice.
Yeah, and I even talked to Bob during the Lotus season when it wasn't he wasn't super involved with us,
Yeah.
So what I will say to recap that is I appreciate that I can have a conversation with you and that you care about it so much that you will work at it. But I think that's like a lot of like what all of you were touching on, the continuity pieces, like the fact that Quinn and Kins have been teammates for a long time. Liam, you've been in this culture for a long time in the Triangle area and Dark Side. I should maybe say more specifically Dark Side. But it's even like when I sometimes we'll call a set like on a pole play, whatever. Like everything we do, by the way, is like at this point some iteration of Dark Side offense because of Nut.
Oh yeah, we just copied you guys.
Oh yeah, big time. But like if you sometimes like
Thanks.
instead of running like a different pull play, maybe you just run the same one 7 times in a row. Not because you think you can just beat the other team, but like as they adjust, you kind of get familiar with the reads. You know what I mean? Like maybe like this next time we expect them to play this way, so we'll counter this way. So the fact that like Kins and Quinn, you have been now running like early in your careers, we were just like reinventing the wheel every year, and we're not doing that as much anymore. We are iterating, that keyword that Leah mentioned earlier, and I think that allows. I think it makes it easier to give and receive feedback when you're like getting into the nuance of things. And the fact that Liam has been more or less been running the same stuff at higher and higher levels for Liam, how long have you been playing? 10 years already?
Yeah, those systems, yeah, I guess 8 years since my first year on Triforce, similar stuff. I mean, it changes a lot. We ran a bunch of vert and stuff, and different stuff, but the spread and those pull plays and stuff, similar stuff for 6, 7, 8 years.
And concepts, yeah. Any other thoughts on this topic before?
I hear you guys, and I just want to say that I think you're wrong.
That's fine.
No, I'm just kidding. I was angsty when I came back from Labrum. We've talked about this before. But even then, like, I was a really shitty teammate for that one game against Revolver. But then I feel like a bunch of people were like, yo, Kins, you're being a shitty teammate. And then I was
people
like...
did not want to play with you. Did we never say this to your face? Are you just like...
Yes, we did. I remember being super sad after the first game of Pro Champs, being like, damn.
Yeah. I think you knew you messed up.
And then I did. And then, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I felt like whatever. Anyway.